Hi, this is Brittany Willis. This is my mid-session assignment for Education 103, Education, Schools, and Culture. The two topics I've decided to talk about today are 3 ways that stress impacts brain development and 2 strategies that educators can implement in schools to combat chronic stress. So first of all, how does stress affect brain development? There is a steroid hormone called cortisol. When this is released in our brain, it's going to affect 3 main parts of our brain, which in turn will impact learning development. So those are the 3 parts of the brain I'm going to focus on. The first part is the amygdala. So your amygdala is responsible for controlling your threat detection and response. It's kind of your brain's fear center. And what happens when cortisol is released is your amygdala becomes overworked, so you're going to feel that heightened sense of fear or anxiety right away. New information is not going to be able to pass through and create memories, and it's harder for the amygdala and other parts of the limbic system to communicate. So that's really going to interfere with you taking in information and retaining that information. Another part of your brain that's going to be affected when cortisol is released is your prefrontal cortex. So your prefrontal cortex is responsible for a lot of your cognitive functions like concentration, decision-making, controlling your emotions, how you interact socially. So when this is overloaded by cortisol, what can actually happen is your prefrontal cortex will shrink itself. It's going to be overruled by your amygdala. Because your amygdala is going to be in that fight or flight response, you're not going to have any control of your emotions. You're not going to be able to do things like that decision making and concentration. It's also going to affect your memory retrieval, so you won't be able to recall things that you've learned previously. And it can actually have an effect called ataraxia, which is your mind going blank. Even if you had just learned something, trying to recall that information is going to be almost impossible. And the last part of your brain that's going to be affected is the hippocampus. So your hippocampus is like the memory center of your brain. It's where they're formed and consolidated. When your hippocampus is affected by cortisol, you're going to be unable to create new memories. You're not going to be able to control your level of stress, and it's actually going to change how you respond to stress throughout your life. You might respond to it way more intensely than somebody who is not affected by high cortisol levels from chronic stress. So with all that being said, as educators, how can we try to combat this chronic stress in students? The first way to do that is to introduce mindfulness in the classroom. So what this looks like is taking time to acknowledge your surroundings, your feelings. It might be through a meditation, a guided breathing. It's really just getting the students to sit there and center themselves, calm their brain, calm their body, to give them the best chance to intake new learning. This works because it targets the exact part of your brains, your hippocampus, your prefrontal cortex, your amygdala, all these parts that are negatively impacted by stress are going to be positively impacted by mindfulness. Another thing educators can do is create a check-in, check-out program. So what this is basically different staff members who probably aren't in the classroom with the student every day are assigned to a student, and they work with the teacher and the student to implement and achieve social emotional learning goals. They're usually social emotional, they can be academic, but if we're talking about stress here, then it probably is going to be that social emotional side. Why this is helpful for chronic stress is this is giving children an opportunity to create a positive relationship with an adult invested in their success. So this adult can actually be working with the student on stress coping strategies, talking through problems that have come up through the day, problem solving their way out of it. This is a huge thing that can help children individually rather than kind of a whole group. So if you have a student who is really experiencing chronic stress, this might be a way for you to make a change for them. And here are my references.